Welcome to the TCBC Bicycle University for January 25th, 2024. My name is Edward Ero, and I'm the coordinator for BikeU. Tonight, we are very fortunate to have Michael Woljak, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Bicycle Alliance, who will be speaking shortly. Before we begin, however, I have a few announcements. This is the second session of BikeU for the 2024 TCBC Ride Year. If you have not heard the previous session on free bikes for kids and from our 2023 Ride Year on Ride with GPS, the Minnesota Public Schools Bike Education Program, winter bicycling, and fat bikes, as well as all the sessions from 22 Ride Year, please do so. There are many great programs on the environment, TCBC history, equity in bicycling, electric bikes, and the Greenway. Please go to the BikeU page off the main TCBC website where you will find the link to each session on the TCBC YouTube channel, where all the recordings are located. The recording of the session tonight will also be up after the conclusion of the meeting and after I have time to edit and post to our YouTube channel, which is usually by tomorrow. I want to give a big thanks to our TCBC BikeU Council of Regents, which includes John Benda, Tim Rand, and Dan Miller, for their work. If anyone else would like to join the council, please contact me, as we welcome others to participate, and we want the council to be representative of the entire club and that we cover subjects you would like to see. I also want to give a big shout out to Jim Pedersen, who has helped in the setup and maintenance of the TCBC BikeU webpage. Jim does so many things behind the scenes for the entire club's website. Thank you, Jim. During the session tonight, please keep your audio muted, but do keep your video on. I noticed some of you came on and don't have video. Please turn that on so we can show that we have people in the session tonight. Remember, we are recording. If you do not have yourself on mute and make any noise, it switches to your video and thus the recording gets messed up. There will be a question and answer session after the presentation, but during the meeting, you can enter questions in the Zoom chat function. We will be monitoring those questions and make sure they get answered during the Q&A. Please do not interrupt the speaker to ask questions during the presentation. I would like to now introduce council member and moderator of the program tonight, Dan Miller, who will introduce our speaker. Over to you, Dan.
Okay, you got me. Hello, everybody. You may or may not know, but I think you all know, is that BikeMN, or Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, has been a TCBC sponsored organization for many, many years, probably since its beginning 15 years ago. And that many of our membership have been involved throughout that time, going way back to Lisa Austin in the beginning days of Bike Minnesota, to Nancy Rohr, who recently was a departing board member of the organization. And we have participated and volunteered at things like the St. Paul Classic, Bicycle BAM, the BAM ride, and many, many others, the Day at the Capitol. So I am very, very pleased that Michael was willing to come to us and just to introduce himself and to put a plug in for BikeMN for our club. He is the new director of Bike Minnesota as of last August 2024, so he's almost 6 months into it, but came to BikeMN after Dorian Gurley resigned. So with that, I'll let you take over, Michael.
Well, I really appreciate the introduction and the opportunity to be here. I'm excited to be here. This is kind of a dream position for me, and we have a lot to celebrate. I talk about our region being the best bicycling region in the country, and people can nitpick at that claim, but I'm happy that we're part of the discussion, and I'll fight for it given all of our challenges. And I have the honor of following Dorian Gurley, who was the founding executive director of BikeMN, and therefore its first 15 years. Last Friday, we had a 15-year celebration and our 2023 Bike Walk Roll Awards. And that was really heartwarming on a cold January night to see, literally hundreds of people show up and pack a room and celebrate with us. So I'm honored to be a part of this organization that's done so much for safe bicycling, walking, and rolling in Minnesota. And, looking to bring my own set of skills. I've told many of you probably know Dorian. He's kind of a legend in bicycling in Minnesota. And I like to tell folks that I could be a poor version of Dorian or a decent version of myself. So I'm working on the latter and just trying to bring some of my unique background to the organization. And we're going to hear a little bit more about the organization later, but I'll give you a little background about myself first. I am originally from the Iron Range in northern Minnesota. I am coming to you tonight from tropical southern Minnesota, Rochester. I moved down here for the warmer climates, so something like that. I also spent time in the Red River Valley. I've spent most of my life living in different parts of greater Minnesota. Education-wise, my undergraduate was in electrical engineering, and I have a master's degree in electrical engineering, and I also have an MBA from the Carlson School. And the fact that I'm here as an executive director of a nonprofit, I can assure you it's because I really care about the mission. I've spent a lot of my adult life in different forms of public service and, came down to Rochester for IBM out of college. I worked for IBM. I worked for a company called Hitachi Global Storage Technologies, both in Rochester, and also spent some time in Japan and worked for a credit union and a bank. And one of those days in June 16th, 2006 always stands out to me because I was on my way home from my job that day and came across the scene of a crash. A road called West Circle Drive here in Rochester. And it's one of those roads that, was just designed poorly, and it was problems waiting to happen. And there happened to be a young family that night that went out for a bike ride together, 3 adults, 3 children. Had to cross. There was no access to any recreational areas for the family without crossing a 4-lane divided highway. Family did everything right and waited. Cars stopped in both directions, and the drivers waved the family across, and the first 5 made it across safely as the cars in 3 of the 4 lanes were stopped. In the 4th lane, the car never even hit a brake and plowed into a 7-year-old girl. Her name was Arianna McNamara. And I didn't see it happen. I saw the aftermath. And I had never thought much about local government or advocacy, but I did spend a lot of time asking questions about that. And what it came down to is ultimately a subdivision was planned where there was never going to be any safe access to recreational opportunities. And the road was never designed to be safe. And it was decisions that came from our county government. And I was really upset about it. And I decided to get active. And I ended up deciding that I was going to be a county commissioner. I wanted to be part of the solution and address that. I was in my 20s at the time, which, if you know county commissioners, puts me about 40 years too young to be in that role. But it turns out my county commission seat wasn't up, though. The next election, my city council seat was up, and the person that had that seat was a well-respected 13-year incumbent, very well connected, very well thought of in the community. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna run a race, see how it goes, and the next time I'll be a little bit more serious about it. And I ended up winning a 6-way primary, and in 2008 I won a seat on the city council for the city of Rochester. To put in context how surprised everyone was, no one in the media knew how to pronounce my name at that point, even though I had been running for office for 6 months at that point. And I remember one of the newspaper journalists asked me the question, "So what do you do now?" And I think my response was, "I don't know. I didn't think I was going to win." So I hit the ground running. I definitely came in like a bull in a china shop. It was I figured I had 4 years on the council, and then everyone was going to be sick of me and get rid of me. And I ended up being there for 12 years. Won re-election a number of times, even won re-election one time with a dark money PAC running ads against me in a nonpartisan race. So it was it was an interesting experience. I learned a lot, and all of those years I was a pretty passionate advocate for safe biking, walking, and rolling, and did a lot of work on infrastructure. And to go back to that story that I told you about coming across the scene where this young girl completely needlessly lost her life. Today, that area is connected to recreational opportunities in a number of different ways, including a bridge that goes over Highway 14 to the north, connecting to Douglas Trail. And that bridge is named the Arianna Celeste McNamara Memorial Bridge. There's a sign on one side of that bridge that I helped design that has the people who were involved in that. And Arianna was the oldest of 3 siblings. And when we opened that bridge, I had the honor of walking the youngest brother out to cut the ribbon on the bridge, and never forget that day. It's something that shouldn't have had to happen, but I'm glad the infrastructure is there right now. As an elected official, you are forbidden from accepting gifts of any price from anyone in local elected office. However, this child made me a penguin made out of pipe cleaners, of which I still have to this day on my bookshelf behind me. And my dog even got it once, so it looks a lot worse than it did when I first got it. But that's what brought me to advocacy. I've served in a number of national roles. I was on the National Board of Directors for the National League of Cities. I was actually the chair of the National Community and Economic Development Board with them. And at the same time, I was running a financial consulting business because, this 50-hour job that I was doing on the city council is considered a part-time job. So a lot of work. 2020, I lost my seat. It was pandemic, and I wasn't going to go out knocking on doors during the pandemic. And 12 years was plenty of time. So went back into doing more finance work. Didn't really enjoy it. Ended up in a position that I really didn't enjoy, and told them around Christmas time of 22 that this wasn't for me. It wasn't going to work out. But I was the only finance person, so I wasn't just going to leave them. And come April, I went on vacation to try and recharge a little bit, came back to the office at 8 o'clock, and by 9:30, I had quit. It was a little bit of uncertainty. I didn't have anything lined up. I mean, I had my other consulting business that I was working on, but what I ended up doing was 2 days after I had quit this position, I found out that BikeMN was going to be looking for a new executive director. So almost like it was meant to be. I knew Dorian from working with him. I'd given him tours in Rochester on some of the infrastructure that we had helped build here. We passed the first complete streets program in the state of Minnesota. We've done a lot to improve the connectivity of our bike system. When I was elected, I said we had a great system of trails in Rochester as long as you didn't need to get anywhere. And a lot of places are just like that. And we've done a lot to connect up these places. We've done a lot to design our streets in a way that is fundamentally safer. I've been a long time advocate for challenging MnDOT on state aid standards, which force highway style designs into urbanized areas that put people at risk. And it doesn't take a whole lot to motivate me to get up in the morning and work on these issues. So I am absolutely honored to be a part of the team. We now have 9 teammates at BikeMN, and we're a relatively new team. Many of you probably know CJ, who does some education for us in advocacy, and I believe CJ has as much experience with the organization as the other 8 of us do combined. So we really are we are a young team, and we're growing, but we're taking on more and more challenges. And one of the first things we brought back is we used to do these walk bike awards. We thought there might be an appetite for it. We might get a few people, and we just had an amazing event on Friday at Udapills. And you're doing a good event when you're in the side room, and the people from the tap room are coming over to see what all the excitement is over on the other side. So that was incredible. And Ted Deppner, who helped organize that, does really incredible work for us. So in addition to that event, one of the big things we do is advocacy, particularly at the state level. When BikeMN was looking for a new executive director, a couple of things that they were looking for is they wanted somebody with greater Minnesota ties, because while BikeMN is very well known in the Twin Cities metro, we do have active chapters around the state, but the name just isn't as well known around the state. And we wanted to make sure that we are truly a statewide organization. And the value that we bring to a lot of our partnerships is we can talk to people across the state because we have members and people who care about these issues across the state. That was important to the organization. The other thing they wanted was somebody who had some local government experience. Well, lucky me, I also checked that box pretty well. And so one of the things that I'm particularly interested in is our organization has been incredibly successful lobbying at the state level, and 2023 was probably the most successful year in the organization's history. And quite honestly, when it comes to biking, walking, rolling, 2023 in Minnesota was probably the best year in any state of any year in most of our lifetimes. It was really that special, and we have people around the country that are incredibly envious. I wish I could take credit for a lot of that. That was, a lifetime's work by Dorian Grilly that led up to that point. If people aren't too informed, maybe I just kind of subtly hint that, and I get a little crossover credibility for that. But the reality is that's the work that the team did before, and we want to build upon that success. We are a membership-driven organization. We have funding from a number of sources, but one of the things that I want to talk to your organization about, and every organization, is the importance of supporting us as an organization, which Twin Cities Bicycling Club does. And we believe we've delivered some pretty incredible results for the state with those resources, but we want to encourage you to be individual members as well. We have a lot of individual members around the state. And ultimately, signing up as a sustaining member for, $10 a month, $100 a year, whatever it is in your budget, $100,000 a year, we're cool with that too, if that's your budget. But the reality is we are a nonprofit organization. We are a 501c3. That means we have some limited ability to do advocacy, and we do it well. But it also means we have a huge education mission. And we've done a lot of work throughout the state of Minnesota to educate people and make their commutes or their rides much safer. Some of the things that we are heavily involved in would include safe routes to school. We've done a lot of education around that. The MnDOT curriculum for biking and walking and rolling is Walk, Bike, Fun. That is something that our organization has put together. We have 4 absolutely outstanding educators on our team. It's about half of our team. We've had contracts with the Department of Health. We've had contracts with the Department of Transportation, the Metropolitan Council, a number of independent grants, and arrangements with local forms of government. But we are the de facto go-to place for high quality bike education for all ages in the state of Minnesota. Probably the program that I have come to love the absolute most, and it's funded in the metro area right now, and we're going to do a couple pilots around the state, is an adult learn to ride program. Now, we have a bunch of folks in this room that couldn't imagine being adult and not having rode a bike, but this program really reaches out to first generation Americans, immigrants, refugees who maybe have never had the opportunity. We've even worked with women who were not allowed to ride a bicycle in the country where they were born. And it can be intimidating as an adult to get on the bike for the first time. What we've done in the last year plus is we've trained over 500 adults to safely ride a bicycle. And as part of this program, through donations, through member support, through contracts, each one of these folks that are learning to ride a bike, we get to give them the bike that they learned to ride on. And for a lot of them, it's their first effective mode of transportation. And one thing I think we all know as cyclists or as walkers or as people that roll is that there is safety in numbers. And when you're on a route that a lot of people use frequently, the cars know to search, and they know that there's a potential that a bike is going to be there. when you're on that occasional trail crossing of a rural highway, that can be a lot more dangerous because there's not necessarily an expectation that somebody's going to be there. So when I was on the city council, I said I very selfishly wanted to make biking and walking safer for me, and I was willing to accept everyone else's safety as a consequence of that. So that was one way of looking at it. The reality is the more of us that get around by these means, whether it's for recreation, transportation, or health reasons, this is absolutely it's imperative that we get more people doing it. And it's also imperative that our mission is safe walk, bike, roll for all Minnesotans. And that's a big part of it too, because cycling organizations are not necessarily historically the most diverse bunch. But the reality is we have a lot of challenges across racial and economic lines in Minnesota. Our organization is deliberately quite diverse, and our board is quite diverse, and we're always working on that. And we always want to figure out too, what is it that makes all of these benefits that folks who look like me get from cycling and walking? How do we make sure that everyone in the state feels comfortable and invited in being part of that? And it's something that we have to be a little bit deliberate for, and it's not always an easy conversation to have. But the reality is that particularly in the Twin Cities area, we know how much power there is in just having the community come together and support these things. I think people are sometimes surprised the first time they come to Minnesota or the Twin Cities Metro and see just how incredible our infrastructure is. I was recently I met somebody from a foundation out of New York, and it's kind of towards the end of the day, and I had been asked to take a meeting with this person and just tell them a little bit about what our organization did. And I'm like, I could come meet you, but you just want to come down to the shop and we'll jump on a couple of bikes and I'll show you around a little bit. And we're on our office is on Minnehaha, about 38th. So we jumped on a couple of bikes. This person had told me they hadn't been on a bike for a couple of years, but they were loving every minute of it. And we rode up to the Greenway. And then I like to go up and down the Greenway because I'm like, here's a signature piece of infrastructure, and let me show you how this connects community. Because on the side that we started out on, it's like, the site of the George Floyd murder is right over here. This is a very diverse area. And if you look around, there's a lot of affordable housing in this area. This is not a high income area, but this piece of infrastructure we're on is absolutely world class. You can see people going both ways and loving it. And we rolled out to the, towards the lakes. And I'm like, this is a very different area. This is an incredibly wealthy area. There's a lot more opportunity here. But this great piece of infrastructure ties people in both of these areas to each other, and it creates opportunities others might not have. Not everybody can drive. Not everyone can afford to drive. The cost of an automobile is $11,000 a year typically now, and that's a huge burden for people who might be struggling to make it. So instead of sitting in a stuffy room and having a meeting with this person, it was great because a few times I need to stop and take a picture. I need to stop and take a picture. And if you're not from Minnesota, you don't realize this infrastructure. And it's not just the cities. That's what's so great. The Gitchagami Trail on the North Shore is fantastic. Every year we get a little bit more of it. I'm from the range. The Mesabi Trail is amazing there. We have these beautiful towns that have become de facto bike trail towns around, whether it's the Cuyuna Range or Lanesboro down in my neck of the woods. Grand Marais is a really fun place. We have all these different kinds of bicycling. Chisholm, Minnesota, with the new mountain bike park that they have there. And people are surprised to see that this is something that really transcends geography and income classes and densities throughout the state, that we have all this infrastructure. Those of us that have lived in Minnesota our entire lives sometimes take it for granted. But one of the things I've absolutely enjoyed the most in this position is that I get on these executive director calls with people in my position throughout the nation, and just the amount of love and respect and sometimes envy towards Minnesota. It's a fun position to be in. I'm like, I wish I could claim credit for this, but I'm just going to roll with it because I am absolutely loving this. So that's a little bit of what we're trying to do as an organization. A little bit more on that education piece. We do a lot of K-12 K-12 education, this adult learn to ride. And a lot of times we're asked to just fill in other areas, whatever that might be. We've developed curriculum for different ages. And we're involved. A major change in the legislation in 2023 is there was a line in state law that said that you may teach kids K through 8 safe age appropriate safe bike walking and rolling, and we changed that to you must. And that is now a state mandate that every student in the state of Minnesota gets in the first 30 or so days of school has to receive education on safe biking, walking, and rolling. And that's very successful, but it was also a lot of scrambling to put materials together. And we were not funded for this per se, but we took every piece of education material that might be appropriate for a classroom and just quickly put it together and tried to get that information out to as many folks as we could. And now there's going to be additional funding in future years to grow that type of education. Besides the education component, advocacy is a huge part of our organization. Now, somebody that I had the pleasure of meeting a few times who unfortunately passed away, Bill Dooley, in 2023, this list of goals that we had for bicycling in Minnesota was we had a pent up list of 14 years of things that we really wanted. And we took almost every one of those things and we put it in something called the Bill Dooley Safety Act. And the Bill Dooley Safety Act passed. And that is pretty incredible. So for those of you wondering the value of a membership in BikeMN, all the supporters, all the people that have funded us for 15 years led us to this incredible summit of achieving this monumental legislation. Some of the things that were included in that, the Idaho stop, which is, we can now treat stop signs as yield signs. We did not get stoplights in there, but I think it's only a matter of time. Once people become more comfortable with this, I think that'll happen in the future. The only downside I found to an Idaho stop, because I'm one of those folks who realizes how much safer it is to get cyclists out of the intersections as quickly as you can. Most of the time when I approach a stop sign, it's because I'm around my home or I'm bicycling around the Twin Cities, and I'm almost always on a bike when I get to a stop sign. When I'm in my car, I'm typically on a highway. And what I've learned, and I've had to catch myself a couple of times, is when I'm driving my car, the Idaho stop no longer works. And it's just I never thought of that as being an unintended consequence, but that's one of the things that I learned from that. In addition to that, you might be familiar with the e-bike rebate. Now, we have been incredibly frustrated with the Department of Revenue at this point for not getting guidance out there. But come July 1st this year, there's going to be a rebate for up to 75% the cost of an e-bike. I think that's up to $1,500. It's going to make e-bikes accessible to a whole lot of people it was not necessarily accessible to. Here in Rochester, I lead a volunteer, what I call age-friendly ride on Fridays in the summer. And I can tell you that seniors who get back on a bike as an e-bike, it is life-changing in terms of the freedom that it grants them, particularly those that are not comfortable or cannot drive. It is a dream mobility device for a lot of people. And I was one of those folks that thought e-bikes were cheating for a long time. And I just got over it, and we just all have to get over it, because I don't care what kind of biking you're doing. If you can do more of it, that's a win. And I think that's what e-bikes deliver. They're expensive. And this is where the rebate helps. And the rebate particularly, it has, there's some guidance where we're trying to get this to lower income folks. Now, the amount of money that's there, the reality is I would expect that this money is going to be gone on day one. And that's part of the challenge. But here's the thing. When you demonstrate there's that kind of demand and desire for this program, it's easier to fund it in the future. And we want to make sure this initial rollout is successful, both for people getting e-bikes and also for those who are the bike shops who are worried about how quickly they're going to get their rebate. And on the advocacy side, we're working with both of those groups. Some of the other things that we've done in terms of advocacy, there are laws out there that people don't even realize are laws, and they're not enforced as such. But if you ever get into a crash, these laws that nobody understands can suddenly take you from being a victim to somebody who was in an incident as you were breaking a law. And one that I like to point to is if you are riding on a county road that has where the bike lane turns into the turn lane. Prior to last year, what you are supposed to do as a cyclist is leave the bike lane, go into the vehicle lane of travel through the intersection, and then return to the bike lane. If you rode through that intersection through the bike lane, you were breaking the law because because you were in the turn lane, you had to turn. Now, a lot of people don't even know that, but you know who would know that? Somebody who got run over going straight from that turn lane. So there's some of these wonky things that we are the voice of reason to try to make sure that the laws are actually out there to protect the most vulnerable users. Another huge advocacy win for us, and I sit on this group now, is we created an advisory council on traffic safety. And this is making a lot of recommendations to the state on a number of issues. And I certainly want to be involved with some of the ones that I've raised already is vehicle hood heights for newer trucks and SUVs. And there's been a lot of data that's come out on how deadly that is. Just design of roadways. A lot of cities and counties want to do the right thing with their roadways, but they run into Minnesota state aid standards or county highway standards. And they can't build a roadway that will slow people down to the appropriate speeds because the law doesn't let them. One additional point that I would mention is that not only do we help create these advocacy bodies, but our team is pretty committed to them. We try to partner with other like-minded organizations, and we get involved in issues that on the surface might not appear to speak directly to bicycling or walking or rolling, but they really do. And one of those are issues of parking reform and land use. Anytime the design standards of a community force you to create automobile-oriented places, it's fundamentally unsafe and uncomfortable for those who bike, walk, and roll. And as I said earlier, there is safety in numbers. And when you get a lot of people that can use a good piece of bicycling or walking infrastructure, there's a lot of inherent safety that comes with that. And if you just spread out people too thin, it's not effective. I mean, we've all had that experience, right, of going down the commercial street where you're riding after one surface parking lot after the next with the 4-lane roadway, cars coming out. It's just not a pleasant environment, and it doesn't matter how you design the bike lane. That's never going to be a good environment. We want to do two things. We want to make sure that cities are allowed to build in such a way that the density of the community can sustain the infrastructure, and it's also critically important that people who would choose to or need to bike, walk, and roll ought to be able to afford to live in a place that allows them to do that. So these are some issues we partner with other organizations, whether it be Sierra Club, Neighbors for More Neighbors, Our Streets, Isaiah, a number of other organizations who really get these issues. Move Minnesota on the transit side too. All of our groups are working together, and we're sharing resources amongst each other to make sure that these outcomes are significant. And sometimes it's a lot of building to get to that success, but wow, in 2023 we had quite the success. And I was talking with Dorian this morning, and he brought up the point that after that act passed, he had to stop and think a little bit about, like, now what do I do? So there was so much in there, and there is more to do. Some of the things that we're working on this year in our advocacy is we're trying to create a default 15 mile per hour design and speed standard in school zones. One of the issues is if you limit speeds at certain times of the day, the engineers are still building the road for 35 or 45 miles per hour. And we need to have a standard that allows people to build safe designs in those areas. We're doing a lot of work with e-bikes, and we're doing that in two ways. One, class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes, which with a lot of groups, I'll get into the details of what they are, but you all could school me on that anyway. So I'm trusting that you know that. But we want to make sure that they're accessible to all people and we don't create barriers. Fundamentally, any bike going down a hill is going to go faster than you can go on a class 3 e-bike. That's just the nature of it. It's a tool that helps people go further. It helps them get through some difficult circumstances, helps them go up hills. We want to make sure that just because people are using an electric assist bicycle, that there are not additional regulations that are put in place that would potentially prohibit them from using it. And the example that I give is there's some push out there to make users of e-bikes have a driver's license. We as an organization are vehemently against that, because one of the greatest equity pieces of e-bikes is that people who can't drive can oftentimes use e-bikes. So we want to make sure that or things like helmet laws, or shaming over visibility standards, we want to make sure that these folks are protected and this continues to be a viable option. And then there's the flip side. Then there's the things in the industry that we also want to protect e-bike users from. And we are passionate about protecting our class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes. We are not so passionate about imported batteries that don't go through any quality testing and cause spectacular fires on YouTube. We don't like that, and it's bad for everyone involved. What we also don't like, and we need to be careful about, is that people who are selling a class 2 or class 3 e-bike that wink, wink, nod, nod, cut this wire, and you've got a moped that can go 45. It may be fun, and some people may like to do it, but it's fundamentally not safe. It does not fit into any classification of a bicycle, and it threatens our ability to have class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes that are available for everyone to use. So we see both sides of that. Probably the biggest thing on my list personally, going back to that first thing I told you about, is Minnesota state aid design standards, and whether that's whatever engineering manual you're looking at. There are some things that are just fundamentally incompatible with cities. You've probably all heard the statistics that at 31 miles per hour, half the pedestrians that are hit will die at that speed. The default speed in most cities right now is 30 miles per hour. In European cities, it tends to be closer to 20 miles per hour. The best practices in the US tend to be around 25. Not only do you reduce the fatalities and serious injuries of people at those lower speeds, but you also decrease the frequency that these collisions are happening. And that's important for us who are very vulnerable on the road, and oftentimes, dealing with distracted drivers and unsafe vehicles. And there is no perfect solution, but right now, cities that want to design safer roads, if there is a state aid component to that, they can't do it. The engineers are telling them, thou shalt build this road at highway standards, even though it's going through your downtown. There is a time and place for vehicles to go fast in between cities, but within urbanized areas, the priority, the design of our infrastructure should be safety, health, and the accommodation of the city around it. And when we build these expressways through cities, we destroy all of that, and we place speed and, or as engineers would say, delay in the corridor and level of service. We're placing that above the needs of humans that live there. And it is just a disconnect that's been a disconnect with the traffic engineering industry for many years. And it's something that I'm pretty passionate about, because I know what happens when you build an unsafe road, and we all know what happens. Everyone who spends time on a bike, we all have the stories, we all know the names, and that's a big part of what I'm here for. Is I want to free urbanized areas to build safer roadways, and even ensure that our, the partners at the Department of Transportation, that they're thinking about roadways in urbanized areas very differently than they do highways, and the standards are just not allowing that right now. There is no city that is willing to challenge the fact that if you are doing a state aid street with MnDOT, they're going to want 11-foot lanes with a 2-foot reaction area. A 13-foot lane is not appropriate for a city. It is appropriate for vehicles going 35, 40 miles per hour, but everybody builds it that way because that's what the standards say they have to do. And that's something that I very much want to see changed. And there are actually a lot of people at the Department of Transportation, because we work closely with these agencies, they care about it too. But once you get out to some of the district engineering staff and county engineers, some of that goes away a little bit, and that's part of the culture that we as an organization are working to adjust. So when you join our organization, when you make a donation to our organization, when you support our organization, you're working on that. We also are oftentimes called to be technical experts and help explain things. We love doing that because we're all bike nerds. It's not hard to get a bike nerd to talk about bikes, right? Sometimes it's hard to get them to stop. And but that's we're honored to be a part of the solution in that way as well. We do have a day on the hill, and this is your personal invitation to everyone who's here live with us and everyone watching this. This year, our day on the hill will be on Pi Day. That is March 14th. Well, I have not yet reached out to the Pi Cycling Club in the Twin Cities, but somehow we've got to have them involved with this, right? There is a you can register at BikeMN.org, and there. What we try to do is we try to really talk about the issues that are most important to us. We have a draft bill, and there are a number of other bills that our partners will be supporting, and we'll be sharing that through all of our communication channels as well. But when you show up on the Capitol in numbers, that you're able to have meaningful conversations with leaders who are making these decisions from around the state, not necessarily just the Twin Cities area, but we want to make sure we're talking to the people and understanding that the safety of those families in Fergus Falls or Lanesboro is just as important as the safety of the families in Minneapolis, and the rules that we're trying to pass speak to all of them. So I'm going to jump to one last topic, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A, because I assure you that's a lot more fun for all of us than just hearing me rant. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the events that we're doing. And a lot of you are familiar with events that we've partnered with in the past. And events are an important part of our organization for two reasons. One, they're a fundraiser for us. They help us pay the bills. They help us pay for the education. They help us pay for the advocacy. We love it when people come out and do events with us. And one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to diversify the appeal of our events. You'll hear me talk time and time again about bike, walk, roll. And here's why we care about all of those things. Cyclists are a particularly passionate bunch. I think we can probably all agree on that. And as a particularly passionate bunch, that's how we were able to create the Bicycle Alliance of Minnesota, aka BikeMN. Nobody really identifies as being a pedestrian or somebody who rolls, and rolls can include people using mobility devices, wheelchairs, motorized chairs, but it can also be all those other things that we're not quite sure about, one wheel, scooters, whatever else it might be. But they're all people that are largely using human power to get around, and they're largely people who are vulnerable. And the fact that the Bicycle Alliance cares about all of these people, it's because we happen to be founded by a particularly passionate bunch, and we're looking out for all of us, and that's a big part of our mission. So, well, we've done some fantastic events in the past. One of the things that I am particularly interested in is trying to figure out how to get different kind of folks showing up for our events and getting different kind of cyclists. Probably the most famous event that we're involved with in Twin Cities area has been the St. Paul Classic, and that's not actually our event. We've been the beneficiary of it for a while, but we have not been invited to be a part of it in 2024, and so that's not something that we're involved with. We are, however, going to pilot a new event, and what we want to do is we want to create something that no formal title yet. It's going to go on some point this fall. We're working out all of the logistics details, and you are some of the first folks to hear about this. But we want to create an event that is a grand celebration of the greatest bicycling region in North America. And that goes beyond any one city, any one style of biking. We want to make sure that the people who normally come to our rides have a route that they can thoroughly enjoy, but we also want to figure out how we can reach into the public schools and get more of the people who live in the urban parts of the Twin Cities to be involved in this. I was incredibly saddened to see the Twin Cities Adaptive Cycling Group discontinue, and I think that is an important part of our community. So we want to make sure as we do events, we figure out how do we engage these folks, how do we give them something to do, how do we get families involved. One of the things we had done in the past is we created this Phelan Fun Fest, and if you were around on Lake Phelan on the Classic last year, it was I hung out there quite a bit because you had kids and families doing as many loops of the lake as they wanted, and they were having a lot more fun than everyone else. We want to make sure that we have the opportunity for kids and families to enjoy. And it's important that we raise funds through our rides because that's an important part of what we do. But we also want to make sure we have opportunities to be accessible for folks who, maybe even a $10 registration might be a bigger hurdle. And one thing we haven't done enough is we don't market ourselves for the good work that we do for the people that we're serving. And we want to make sure that we use these opportunities, these rides, to engage people and talk about what we're doing on the advocacy side, how we're making infrastructure safer, how we're working on education. We want to use these events as an opportunity to bring the community together. So we are going to be having still finalizing some details, but BikeMN is going to be putting on its biggest program of statewide events in our 15-year history this year, and with a new signature Twin Cities celebration ride. And I would expect starting to see some final dates and some marketing for this coming out. Also, just within the last week, Bicycling Around Minnesota, BAM, is now officially a part of BikeMN. And that just happened here recently. I know the dates. I know what the route's going to be this year. And very shortly, you all will too. But if that's something that you're interested in, we're probably going to make registration first available to BikeMN members, because that's an event that sells out very quickly every year. And it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be partnering and doing events in places we've never done them before. Rochester is near and dear to my heart, and we're looking to pilot the first ever Rochester ride this year. We are looking at possible mountain biking events in the future. We are talking about piloting a bike packing event, and these are all just different ways for people to be involved with us. And because we want to know our members, we want our members to be out celebrating with us. We want our members to show up and do advocacy with us. These are all important pieces to keeping this excitement going. So in closing, what I would say is that I didn't know that this is where my career was going to take me. Obviously, I experienced some things that clearly this became a passion of mine. While I was on the city council, it was not an intention of mine, but it was a novelty that a city council member in Rochester would show up to a council meeting on their bicycle. They just couldn't understand why anyone in a civilized society might do such a thing. And it wasn't my intention to make a point with that. It was actually just an easy way for me to get around, an enjoyable way for me to get around. But a little bit that became the story. And I think for a lot of us, because we're seen on a bicycle or we're out seen walking, whether it's, for running, doing other things, it becomes part of our identity. And I didn't want to shy away from that. Rather, I've embraced it. And I've had incredible opportunities as a result of that. I'm thankful for the opportunities that have been given to me. And now my job is to make sure our team is as strong as we possibly can do. We get involved in the areas where we need to be. We are responsive to our members. We invite our members to be part of our process. We invite our members to be part of our advocacy. We answer questions for our members. We take suggestions. And we continue to keep this organization strong, because the best bicycling state in the country, the best bicycling region in North America, they deserve the best bicycle education advocacy organization. And that's what we have here in Minnesota. I'm incredibly honored to be a part of it. I thank the organization for your support of BikeMN. And I also thank those of you that are individual members, and those of you that after watching this are going to be excited to sign up to be individual members as well. That's how we keep it strong. And if you've met our team, you know the quality folks that we have. So I'm again honored to be here, and I will turn it over for questions because I am about out of breath.
Hi, Michael. I'm a long-term member, and I just looked up my name in the membership list in the newsletter, and just wanted to say that I think a lot of us really don't know Rochester. So tell us about the bicycling community in Rochester.
Rochester is an interesting place. A lot of times, Rochester is a statistical anomaly. So anytime you look at a list, it's like Rochester doesn't seem like it fits in with other places. And it just has to do with the nature of our economy. You know, having a city of 125,000 with an employer of 35,000 downtown. And we had some major flooding in the 60s and 70s. And as a result, we had a lot of flood control projects. And one of the best decisions the community ever made is along these 4 rivers that converge in Rochester, we largely have river trails on both sides. So we had this great spine of a system. And for the most part, it uses underpasses. There are gaps here and there, but we just had this incredible starting point. In the last 15 to 20 years, what we started doing is creating better on-street networks, still not great. Closing some of the connections, putting in key bridges and other pieces of infrastructure. So this became a more unified route. The downtown employment density that we have a lot of people who bike, walk, roll to get to work downtown for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which is there's not nearly enough parking. We've seen significant densification, much like Minneapolis and St. Paul has, particularly in these areas where people can bike, walk, roll to work. As we redo projects, they're being done in a safer and safer way. So one of the challenges in our community is our population turns over very quickly. We have a lot of professionals who will come for 2 to 4 years and then they're out of medical school or they're on to the next place. And it makes keeping things going as an organization tough, but we have this incredible group. It's called We Bike Rochester. They are the local chapter of BikeMN. I know as the executive director of BikeMN, I'm not allowed to have favorite chapters, but no. So they've gone through leader after leader, and they somehow managed to keep pulling in fantastic people who care about the mission and keep us engaged, make us good partners in the community. They're good local advocates. We had an attempt by a couple council members to get rid of all of our downtown bike infrastructure that we were able to stop in its tracks. There's a major Mayo Clinic expansion that it would displace the current infrastructure, and we're just trying to make sure that when everything is said and done, it's a great investment and everyone can still continue to get around safely in downtown. So this organization has really become a powerhouse. You know, it's the people who grumble about the all powerful bicycle lobby. You hear that down here as well, and they're big contributors to BikeMN as an organization as well. A lot of our we do have really 2 groups down here. We also have an active sports club down here, and they do a lot more of the gravel and the performance rides out on the county highways, that kind of stuff. Some of you probably know like the Filthy 50, which is a popular gravel ride down here. Douglas Trail is the most heavily used state trail in the DNR system, and that goes from Rochester to Pine Island. More and more we have businesses that are supporting. There was kind of a running joke when I was on the city council that if you built a brewery in the city of Rochester, you got a bridge to your business, which was not the intention, but it did kind of work out that way. So you're seeing social rides, you're seeing rides for transportation, you're seeing rides for sport, you're seeing significant growth in mountain biking, and better connections. We're not where the Twin Cities is in terms of our infrastructure and our culture, but we are headed in that direction with a very different kind of population. And Doug, thank you for being a member for a long time. That's we don't say that enough. The 2 things we don't do enough, I think, in the past as an organization is reach out and thank our members. And then just in general, everyone in advocacy, we are always bemoaning the one thing that we didn't get done, and we just need to celebrate more. That's something that I'm trying to bring to this team is we've done a lot of great work and we should celebrate that. And that's what was so fun about that event last week. And the whole time leading up to it, I'm just telling the team, celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. We did some incredible things. And you feel better about everything when you just get together and celebrate what you have done instead of bemoaning what you haven't.
So, Michael, I've been a member for a long time, and I've also attended many of the Day at the Capitol events. Mm-hmm. And it's something I would like to encourage our membership to participate more in. But maybe you can just do a brief review. What to expect when you register? What happens?
Yeah. And I've been involved with a number of different lobby days from my city day, from my sit time on the city council. But what I would say is, it really is kind of you're planning out a full day. We're strategically picking where it is in terms of where it falls in the session and what day of the week is. And absolutely, the number one thing we want to do is facilitate contact between people who care about these issues and the people who will be making decisions on these issues. We have professional staff who, based upon your registration, your address, will know who your state representative, who your state senator are, and we'll know the people that maybe we don't have the people directly from their district, but we can go in as a statewide organization and talk to them. We take some guidance. We work closely with the House and Senate transportation chairs. They've been fantastic partners for our organization. And a little bit we're listening to them because while we're advocating for our own work too, we want to make sure that those people at the in office that are dealing with these issues, we want to make sure that we are a good partner for them too, and that we're helping them achieve what they need to achieve. We typically we rent a church that's right by the Capitol. We're working. The biggest complaint we've had is the lack of quality bicycle parking, so we're working on that for this year. There's food available. You're going to come in the morning. We're lining up some speakers. I'm not sure who one of them that I'm the most excited about this year is Representative Kraft has agreed to speak. And a big part of the transportation last year was MnDOT finally had a mandate to reduce VMTs per capita on the state highway system. And every time we've ever had anything about congestion or pollution, there's always been a loophole that the engineers can say, just one more lane and we'll solve congestion, just one more bridge and we'll solve congestion. Well, there's no loophole when it's VMT, and it's a very powerful piece of legislation. A piece of legislation is good when people from all over the country take notice and they're trying to figure out how to kill it in the next session. So we're going to have Representative Kraft come talk about that piece of legislation, and just in general, how we get the Department of Transportation to rethink what their mission and their priorities are, and really prioritize health and human safety, particularly in urban environments. That's going to be one speaker that we have for sure. I'm hoping to get partner organizations in there that can talk too about things that you might not necessarily think as bike, walk, roll issues, but really are important to being successful in this field. And just having done the adult learn to ride, we have so many inspirational stories. I'm hoping we can find some folks that'll come talk a little bit about how that experience was for them, because it's if you've seen any of the news coverage on any of our adult learn to rides, the stories are just unbelievably heartwarming, and I'm hoping we can have some of those folks involved too.
Could you explain VMT for the group?
Oh, yes. VMT is vehicle miles traveled. It's typically how you would measure how many cars are going how many miles in a particular area. And going back to my engineering nerdy days, the reality is every county engineer and highway engineer forever, they just want to have an assumption in their model that says there will be X% growth in VMT every year forever. And well, we need to design this for what it's going to be in 50 years. And 2% growth over 50 years means we have to build a really big impassable bridge. And it's not till you get this culture of, no, how do we actually make this sustainable? How do we create opportunities for people where they live, connect work and home and other places, so that not everyone has to get in a car and drive 45 minutes to get to where they need to be. That's how you solve the VMT thing. It's not done in the same way. I mean, in rural Minnesota, it's a whole different game. It's there's great downtowns and everything, but the opportunity to reduce VMT is really in urban areas. And when you reduce VMT, you reduce air pollution, you reduce toxic pollution from brake pads and other things that tend to be on the roadways. You reduce congestion, you reduce injuries, you reduce noise. There's a lot of good things that go with reducing VMT. And if you keep building more roads, you keep getting more traffic. I always like to ask people, name a city that you've ever been to that has solved congestion issues by building more lanes. I bet you can't come up with one.
I think one of the things that I've appreciated doing going to the Days at the Capitals are not only the speakers and being able to speak with friends and make new friends, but also a chance to I've gone to see my my representatives in the past, my state senator, and have developed a relationship with them and about bike issues. And
I will tell you all a secret about effective lobbying, and we are really good in our field at knowing all of the statistics and all of the rules and all of the numbers, and we can be technically right on everything, but we're not always great at telling a story. And I can tell you that with these policies, if you can tell a story on how a particular piece of legislation affects you, that's what sticks with people. That's what they remember. I always bring it back to that little girl who should be here today and is not, and people remember that. And that's part of being on the day on the Hill. Legislators need to hear your stories.
There was Dan put a number of links in the chat to, and I'll put those in the on our website too after the program. So stuff on how to register for the summit and how to join BikeMN, how to do adult learn to ride. There was also Evelyn put a thing in about the rebate on back to electric bikes. Seems to be a catch-22. It seems to only apply to low income folks, at least at full levels. But those folks still have a big gap to complete the purchase. Any comment on that?
Yes, that is very true. I mean, the other thing is entry level e-bikes. We've seen a quality e-bike go down pretty significantly in cost too. You know, a couple of years ago, to get something that I think was really solidly built was a $2,000 bike. I can tell you that I'm seeing some pretty high quality products in the sub 1,000 for a class 1 range right now. And you are right that there is a gap, but people still want it. Seniors in particular still want it. And we need to stop thinking about e-bikes as being expensive bikes and think about them as being cheap cars, because you can really replace a significant number of your trips with an e-bike. In Rochester, so I lived in Grand Forks in 1997, which was, one of the worst floods in U.S. history. So everywhere I have ever owned a piece of property, it's always on top of a really big hill. I'm still struck like that. And I have a whale of a hill to get up to my house. Now, I enjoy commuting by bicycle, and I'm happy to take my road bike out. But the reality is, there's a little bit of a motivation gap to go down this huge hill to pick up a gallon of milk and come back up. Not an issue with the e-bike. And I think that's why when you actually get into the trip replacements, you don't have to use an e-bike a whole lot at $11,000 a year or 65 cents a mile before it's become cash flow positive. And we're seeing that. We're seeing people who wouldn't spend $250 to get a decent quality bike, more so than like your Walmart off the shelf thing, but they're willing to spend much more than that to get a quality e-bike. And the reality is as more people purchase more e-bikes, there is more used e-bikes, people upgrading to be available. Ultimately, the combination of the improvements in technology, the improvements in safety, the lowering of component costs, the improvement of battery technology, it's going to become more and more viable. But yeah, that $200 to $400 for a low income person, that might be a significant burden. And I think that that's something that maybe some communities are going to look at ways of plugging that as well. But compared to keeping an automobile running or having a much more difficult commute, I think there's a lot of people who still benefit at that price point. And the ultimate thing is, no program is perfect for everyone. But like I say, in this case, the money is going to be available July 1. I expect the money to be gone July 1. And then how do you improve the program in the future?
Yeah, and I don't disagree with any of your comments about the fact that the e-bikes are a very valuable item, especially for the folks in low income. But the 1,500 potential is available to people with 25,000 or less annual income. And it goes down from there. It goes down slowly. It's
Yeah.
1% every 4,000, but it does go down. And that has to go through a authorized in-state reseller, a brick and mortar reseller in state. And those folks aren't necessarily selling the sub $1,000 e-bikes, at least not that I've been able to find so far. Those are the cheap stuff on online.
There, I do see some. We do have some in the definitely less than 1,500 range right now. I would double check on the numbers. I don't believe that 25,000 is the upper bound for the maximum. I believe it's actually more like 40,000 or 80,000 for a household. But you're right, not a lot of people, and it does trickle down as I think about 125 is where you've exhausted the ability to get the rebate at all. And where I think the group that really benefits from this the most is probably seniors who are living on a fixed income. I think they're probably the group that this is going to benefit the most. Generally speaking, urban professionals are probably not going to qualify for the rebate. But the other catch-22 with this rebate is that, and bike shops have said this, people are holding off on buying e-bikes because they're waiting for the rebate, and that hardly anyone's going to get that rebate. And not only that, but the reductions in prices that I'm seeing right now in bike shops on e-bikes are probably more substantial than most people are going to get on the e-bikes anyway. So it's not a perfect program. My hope is that 1,600 or so people will benefit in some way from this program, and the state will realize there's need for more, and some of these potential shortcomings that you're talking about are things that we can address. I do think there is some wisdom, and if the dollars are limited, lower incomes are the places where those dollars are best spent, even though that might not be personally preferential to me.
Other states successfully doing this e-bike rebate, or is Minnesota kind of a pioneer at this point?
Colorado was the pioneer on this one, and they're every time they've done it, there's been almost immediately oversubscribed, and they keep coming back with more money. I know Hawaii has done. They had a program that was really poorly laid out, but it was still oversubscribed. I think there's probably a dozen states around the country that are doing this in some form or fashion right now.
And keeping with e-bikes, I live in downtown Minneapolis, so I'm on the trails quite a bit. And we've addressed this, with the bike club allowing class 1, 2, and 3 on our rides. I think initially we didn't allow the ones with throttles. But I think it is an issue with these throttled bikes because really they're a motorcycle. And should they really be allowed on trails where the assist, you've got to pedal? And not saying that there's bicyclists that are pedaling that aren't very courteous with things, but I see it a little bit more with some of these ones that are just cruising down as fast as they can go without any etiquette of warning that they're coming on your left or right. And so I have a personal thing with some of the throttled bikes, that they should be on the street and not on trails.
The one thing about the throttled is if they're operating correctly, the throttle can't go beyond 20, which is, for a ride, it's a pretty reasonable speed for being along with the ride. One thing you can't do is legislate good behavior. And I think that what throttled bikes are doing is they're taking people who might not normally be on a bike and getting them on a bike. And I think there's some learning that probably has to come along with that. I would say that, I see the same thing with scooters. And the one that really scares me is the one wheels. I don't know if you see many one wheels, but and those are truly not, one wheels shouldn't be on trails. They're not they don't fall under a classification that fits. I think the ones that are the biggest issues are the ones that are modified. So you are using a throttle beyond 20. I evolved because I initially thought e-bikes were cheating, and then I learned to love one. And then I thought a throttled e-bike was cheating, and we had one donated at the shop, and I used it to get around town quite a bit. And what I will see is when you're doing city riding, and you're either at a stop and getting to go, or you want to catch that green light. It is kind of useful and nice from time to time, and I will admit that I don't hate it as much as I once did. Um, and it's hard because what you're bringing up are real issues, and I've been frustrated by some of that same stuff as well. But what's killing people are large trucks and SUVs right now, and I do think that there at some point we have to separate between the frustrations we have with things that can cause injury and are frustrating, and these trucks and SUVs that are killing 40,000 Americans a year. It's just sometimes we lose the scale of one problem and focus in on the things that are nearer to us. So I don't want to discount the frustrations with these different styles of e-bikes. As an organization, we want to protect the class 1, 2, and 3 classification. Those in particular, we aren't concerned so much outside of that. What I will say too is that when we talk about that equity piece and the mobility and people that can ride an e-bike but maybe can't ride a standard bike, that throttle and initial acceleration can be something that really can help people with limited mobility in a way that if that option wasn't available to them, it wouldn't. So not discounting your points, just saying there's a lot going on there, and it's I'm more concerned about making sure the throttles don't go beyond the 20, because that's unsafe for everyone and not complying with the law, and it makes us all look bad.
Yeah, it's good points, and I think it's a lot to do with just people getting on, like you said, that aren't really bicyclists, so they don't really know etiquette very well and how to, communicate that they're passing, or and there's regular bicyclists that do that too. So I'm not just saying all e-bikers are like that, but I guess I've had experience with the scooters and the one wheel, skateboard things that one almost ran me over. I see where you're coming from. I just think it's
Yeah.
more to do with education.
I always tell
bike.
folks every time I'm almost run over, it's another successful trip.
Yeah, the fact that they're not educated, shall we say, in terms of bicycling etiquette.
Yeah.
The cure for that, I think, is best by embracing them, not by outing them or othering them. Because if we other them, then they're never going to be part of the community.
And technology is changing very quickly too. And as we do this education for the K-8, and adult education, and actually we do a people-friendly driving education seminar that we've done in other places as well. And I think part of that is that education, and the bike shops can be a big part of this too, about just teaching some of that basic etiquette that comes along with these purchases. So definitely inviting them into the tent and making them part of the group that's trying to enact positive changes. I think you're spot on.
I had one other question back on your board of directors. Can you tell me how big the board is, who are the members, and how if someone wants to become a member of the board, how would they do that?
One of the things that attracted me to this position is we are blessed to have a really incredible board. We've got it's typically somewhere between 15 and 20 people that are on the board. We're always looking for new folks. We love cross-pollinating with other groups as well, so we have that, the shared goals that we're working on. Our current Andy Lampert's our current chair. He's with Cycle Hoop. We have probably 8 people from greater Minnesota in different places who are actively involved. We have a number of people from the Twin Cities working in nonprofit, development, finance. Those are some of the skills that are particularly important to us. One of the things when you're Dorian Grilly, and those of you who know Dorian, everything just works with Dorian because he just kind of he's been living and breathing this for 40 years or whatever. And I've made a pretty good point to say, when I came in, I can't do this all by myself. So I'm going to need the boards to step up. And we've created subcommittees, and we've activated the board members with these subcommittees focused on different areas. And there is an application to be on the board. on our website. And additionally, I'm Michael at BikeMN.org. And, some people contact that way too. Typically, we allow people to serve on the board for up to 2 3-year terms, so 6 years consecutively. I would say that most people who in the bicycling community have probably been tied into our organization some way or another over the past 15 years. But we really are looking for more. We're looking for people who maybe are tied in with different groups that are willing to do that. We're very cognizant that we want to make sure that our board looks like the people of Minnesota. We have, different skill levels, ages, incomes, skin color, whatever it may be. We're always looking for different folks to serve in those capacities, because for us to make biking, walking, rolling safe for all Minnesotans, we actually have to listen to all Minnesotans. And we love it when we get people that can bring us into communities that we don't necessarily see ourselves. And that's been a huge benefit. So yeah, 15 to 20 people. The commitment is, board meetings are basically monthly or executive committee. There's some subcommittees most of the folks serve on. And then there's just the being a champion, being at our events, helping us do what we do, making the connections. And, probably the hardest part is you have to have fun on a bicycle too. So if you can suffer along with that, it might be for you.
Any other questions? Or Dan, did you have anything to?
No, I just thank you, Michael, for a very, very informative hour of getting to know you and getting to know BikeMN. And I just encourage membership to consider joining, taking a look at the website, which I think has gone through some revisions the last 6 months and has a lot of new information on it. So it's very deep, and you can spend a good hour with a cup of coffee on it. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. I hope to cross paths with you all many more times, and I hope we all have many wonderful years of enjoying what we do ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much, Michael, and Dan. Thanks for moderating tonight. And also a big thanks to everybody that attended this. And please tell others in the club to be sure to watch the recording when we get that up on the YouTube channel. Should be up tomorrow. Just to finish up, the TCBC Bike U Council of Regents is working on other sessions. And some of the upcoming ones will be on randoneering, bicycle maintenance, commuting by bicycle, professional bike fitting, and also doing a special session with the TCBC Tuesday Tune-Up Ride, who celebrated recently their 25th anniversary, and just talk about some of the successes they've had in putting together a ride that's been around a number of years now. If you have other ideas for programs, please write to BikeU at biketcbc.org, and the council will discuss them at our next meeting. So thank you all again for attending, and we hope to see you again next time.